Hi, here we are again to talk about the next phase of growth of a business. And this is when you look at employing staff, growing the business because you don't want to be doing everything. So there's a few decisions to be made. One is initially, particularly as you grow a business, do you employ someone, or is it better to outsource that service to another service provider? E.g. in this case, particularly things like bookkeeping. Then you've got casual staff, and then you've got permanent part-time or full-time staff. Now that can be either on a permanent basis or a temporary contract type arrangement. So let's dig into a bit more detail. Particularly with the stage of business, you've got to consider that in early growth phases, how much working capital you've got, how fast is the business revenue going to grow, attracting those new clients. You make too much of a firm commitment to staff on a permanent basis, it can cause all sorts of problems. The next thing to consider is the type of role. Is it a professional type role where you may not actually be able to properly supervise them because you don't know whether they're doing the job right or not? So sometimes that's where you might use an outsourcing service like bookkeeping or something like that, so that you're not having to be responsible as a director of a company maybe for supervising someone that you can't really supervise properly. And then realising that who's liable for the work done. As you take on staff, you're liable for the work they do, to supervise them properly, to make sure they're properly trained and so forth. Whereas if you properly use an outsourced contracting arrangement done properly, that contracting supplier becomes liable for the work done. Okay, so here we're going on to actually making the decision to employ staff. The first really important thing is to make sure you've got an appropriate work cover policy in place. Now in Queensland, that's through Work Cover Queensland. It's a government-run solution, and you need to make sure that you've got the right choice of type of staff that you've got. So if you're in a high-risk industry like construction, you make sure you say that they're construction staff. Or if you're in an office-based environment like an accountant, that you pick the right type of staff, because your premiums are related to that. Superannuation. Now superannuation now is 10% on top of whatever gross salary package you negotiate with your staff or award or so forth, and it's payable quarterly. Now sometimes where people try to use these labour hire contracts and so forth like that, you still may be responsible for the superannuation if it's not done properly. Leave entitlements. Casual versus permanent or permanent part-time, permanent full-time or permanent part-time. What are the requirements? It's really important to understand those, because there still are some long-term leave entitlements for long-term casuals, like long service leave. So it's really important to understand that. And what level of control do you want? So you have much more control over employing staff than you do using outsourcing arrangements. So it's important to understand the type of role and the importance of it to you, and how important that level of control is. Moving on to casual staff, there's been a lot of changes in this area within the last 12 to 18 months, with a number of large court cases. There's now a number of terms that you need to be aware of when you're looking at employing casual staff. And one of the things that assess whether they're casual or maybe even permanent part-time or full-time is what sort of firm advance commitment do you have to providing work to them. If you're scheduling things a long way out, that these will be the hours, then that may be considered a firm advance commitment and change the nature of the employment arrangement. It's not what you call them, it's what the nature of how the staff are utilised. They all need to be provided with the new Fair Work Information Statement on casual employment as soon as practical, usually before they start, but as soon as practical after they start, if not. So they understand what casual means. Now, the latest change in this area is what's called casual conversion. It means that and this is why your documentation, your dates, reminders are really important, is that after 12 months of having a casual staff member, if they're working in pretty consistent ways and so forth like that, you have to actually make an offer to them to convert them to, let's say, permanent part-time. They do not need to accept that, but you need to be extremely well documented that you have made the offer. Now, casual roles can be very advantageous for the employer and the employee if they're studying as well and things like that. So, and they want to be able to take flexible holidays rather than having to fix to four weeks a year. But it's important that these procedures are followed to the letter. So permanent roles, these take various types of arrangements. It can be permanent part-time. Permanent part-time might still be only 1 day a week, but it's permanent and expected. Full-time, depending on your award and so forth, averagely a full-time week is about 37.5 hours. It's important to understand what breaks are required within the days, and this goes for casual as well. 5 hours is a maximum you can have a staff member do with only a 10-minute break. Then they need at least a half-hour lunch break. Often they're not required to give more than a half-hour lunch break. A lot of people give hours. Half hour is the requirement. And if you do a full-time day, it's a half-hour lunch break and generally two 10-minute breaks either side of lunch as well. So what are temporary contracts? This might be a situation where a staff member may be going on maternity leave or paternity leave, and you only need to replace them for a fixed period of time, but still on a permanent type arrangement. So they're called temporary contracts, but it might be a temporary part-time or a temporary full-time role. And it's all documented in the employment contract. So what we've covered there is all about employing your first staff member and so forth. Lots of things to think about. We've only brushed over the top. So there's a lot more detail to the decision and how to do it. What are we going to talk about next in our next session is about the difference between determining what product or service or solution you're going to sell to a potential client, and then how you actually promote that to the target market. So things like the product or solution, actually what you're going to sell, to who, your preferred client avatar, that's a trending term these days. There may be more than one, but it's determining who they are. And then the actual advertising and promotion of those products and how you get them out to the marketplace and get that engagement. So thank you for your time again today, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future. Thank you.